morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Valley Community Church Divine Science. If you have your cell phone with you, it might be a good time to turn it to mute or turn it off. Well, today we're in for a treat. We have Kathy and Pam are going to speak to us today on their personal experiences here with Valley Community Church. We always enjoy when we have our personal speakers. Today's woman reader is Amy Jo, and our special friend and guest musician is Carrie Rutledge.
Yay.
Amy?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we're going to sing.
The reading today is from this book, Time for Joy. And there's a quote, "There is no winter harsh enough to withhold the promise of spring. No matter how badly we feel, it is only for now. When in deep pain or confusion, we often think it will be that way forever, that we can never feel better. When in the depths of darkness and despair, it can be hard to remember there will be light again. There are so many lessons in the cycles of nature. Sometimes they might sound trite, but truth is really that simple. Dawn does follow night, always. Spring does follow winter, always. No matter how dark the night has been, no matter how harsh the winter has been, we too change, as do the seasons." And the affirmation is, "I can go through anything a day at a time, a moment at a time, with the faith and the knowledge that my higher power is guiding me to peace and security."
We're supposed to sing our first song, and it's supposed to be on the board up here.
I'm trying to find it.
We're going to have a lull right now. There we go. If you'll stand with me.
I can't. All right, now.
There you go. I'm sure Rick's going to love this, but while we're seated and comfortable and before our Bible verse, let's sing our call to worship. Oh, draw me, Lord. We haven't done that in a while, and I like to hear some of those deep notes. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. And I'll run after you. See, it's not very hard. We just repeat. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. And I'll run after you. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. And I'll run after you. One last time. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. Oh, draw me, Lord. And I'll run after you. Thank you, Rick. Isn't that a wonderful invitation? Well, I hope you're feeling peaceful. Our scripture today is from Luke chapter 10. And here's that little nugget that we're looking for. And into whatsoever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. Oh, a lesson I'm learning here lately, just this summer. You know, I had an experience coming up. I knew it was going to happen. I knew the people that would be there. And I was instantly tense. Not a good way to live, right? Instantly tense. I know what happens with stress. Right? It causes your serotonin levels to rise. That causes belly fat. So we don't want that. So I want to be a peacemaker. I bet you do too. And so I said to myself, I've got to speak peace into this situation. I'm not going to wait for anything to happen. I'm going to intend on some peaceful things to happen. So when I went into this situation, maybe not out loud, but it doesn't have to be out loud, I spoke peace into the situation. I said, I will bring peace where I cannot see peace. I will bring peace when I cannot find the peace. That's being a peacemaker. Now, often, we get an opportunity to meet new people or old people. Let me rephrase that. People we already know. Not all of them are old, right? Old is a state of mind. But always speak peace into that situation. The verse says, whatsoever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. Well, I've taken it to even a different level. How many people are starting to receive all sorts of telemarketing phone calls, again, on our cell phones, right? And what's so embarrassing sometimes is that the person on the phone talks as if they're really there and it's just a recording. Because you asked a question and they just, and then you're like, hello, hello, hello. It's not even a real person sometimes. But if it is a real person, I say no thank you politely and peace be to your house. And they're like, oh, what? Peace be to your house. And they say, oh, okay, thank you. Hopefully that'll stick with them a little while when they get home. The kids are screaming, telephone bleeping, beeping, TV roaring. They can say, wait a minute, peace be to this house, right? Peace. Most people think of peace as calm and still. I'd like to leave with you this thought. Give watchful attention to each and every word, each thing that you think or you decree. And whatever you declare, when it is established, speak the word of peace. And peace is also established in your consciousness, blessing your life and all whom you meet. Now, I know you've heard this before. It was a song, actually. It says, sometimes he calms the storm, and sometimes he calms the child. I say count on peace. It's one of your inherencies. It belongs to you. It is God in you. So let's say, peace be to all.
Peace be to all.
All right, say with me our divine science statement of being. God is all, both invisible and visible. One mind, one power is all. Sorry, one presence, I forgot that word. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. I am the individualized expression of God, and I am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. Peace. Come on up.
Let's see here. Okay. First of all, been having trouble with my throat for a long time, so it comes and goes, allergies. So I don't know what's going to happen this morning, but this might help a little bit. Spring water, I hope so. I did the other before I left the house. No, I'm just kidding. And one more thing.
Oh, you look so pretty.
I haven't sung out in front of people since the last time I've been here, probably. I'm nervous.
Wow. Feels love.
Okay.
Peace be with you, Terry.
So this is a song that Reverend Buckles from a church in Salem heard this by John Denver, and he brought it to my attention. I'd never heard it before, and I think he wrote it for one of his symposiums, you know, to help the earth and all this that he was so involved in, and he wrote it right before he went up on stage. So he sang it one time, and then that was the one and the only time he ever sang this song. Now, it mentions Mother Earth in here, which, you know, I thought it was strange that Reverend Buckles, you know, would acknowledge this or whatever, but I think the song speaks to many. And it's not just about, you know, taking care of the earth, but in the things that it says. I hope it speaks to you. Let the mountains talk, let the river run. There is wisdom here, there is much to learn, there is much to know, much to understand. In this healing time, all across the land, you have heard my songs, oh so many years. You You have laughed with me, washed away my tears. You have shared my joy. You have felt my pain. In this healing time, walk with me again. Through the darker days, on this narrow line, help me find my way. Help me see the signs. I am not afraid. I am not alone. You have taught me well. You have brought me home. Let the mountains speak. Let the rivers run. As the world awakes to the rising sun. In each brand new day, in our own rebirth, in this healing time, on our Mother Earth. Let the mountains talk, let the rivers run. There is wisdom here. There is much to learn in each brand new day, in our own rebirth, in this healing time, on our Mother Earth.
Nice gift for us. Is there any requests in our box this morning? All right. I know that each of you have someone that you would like for us as a family to remember in prayer. So just hold out your hand there with that person, that situation. And let us pray together. Most gracious, loving God, all that I am, all that I know, the one good. We thank you that you have the solution to every problem. And we thank you that we can bring to you, in memory, in mind, in consciousness, those we love and care for. And we trust that you will be in their situation and in their mind, and that all will be well. Amen. Let's get ready for a nice meditation time. Get comfortable. And as the lights go down, I ask you to forget for a while. Put aside every single thought that we are separate. Just let it go. Feel our oneness and know that we are right now in the presence and in the oneness and in the power of God. When you hear my voice, just repeat it to yourself if you like. Definitely take this moment to deeply contemplate and realize fully that in God you do live and move and have being. Let's take a deep breath in together. Rejoice in knowing that we're sharing an experience in this time-space continuum. And be perfectly aware that there is no distance between yourself and God, our source. Know in your heart this morning the very nature of God as your divine mind and of universal wisdom. I know it's hard to do, but for just a little while, let's go of our past. Let's let go of our past. And know that the past has no power over us. Do not fear your future. Rest in the promise that you are never alone. For God's presence always surrounds you. I know that God's presence is you. Feel your feet on the ground and know that where you are is holy ground. That there is just goodness abounding, just waiting to be expressed. There is goodness just waiting to be demonstrated. Just open up and experience the good. And let God be God. Let's affirm now together our oneness. Know that we abide in the house of God, in the consciousness of God, right now and always. Whisper out loud after me, just a whisper. I am always divinely guided. Don't just say it, but know it. Now for the next minute or so, I'm going to be very quiet. I'm going to think on all these things. I invite you to do the same. Think on all these things with the deepest, deepest gratitude. Come unto me, calls our God. Come unto me, the divine within you calls. And I am going to give you rest. I give you rest. I give you rest from all your false beliefs, All those things that worry, bother, cause you guilt. I give you rest from that thinking. Come unto me. I'm going to give you rest and divine activity, which is always thinking in you, always working through you. Come unto me, I'm the God of harmony and peace, and I will give you rest in the divine idea that is perfect within you. Come unto me and think with the all good, and I will give you the deepest peace. Let us pray together our Lord's Prayer as we know it. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed is thy name. Thy kingdom is come, thy will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Thou givest us this day our daily bread. Thou forgivest us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Thou leadest us not into temptation, but dost deliver us from all thoughts of evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all the power, and the glory, forever and forever. Amen. And now we have a very special time. Some of us say the most special of all times is to hear our family members talk to us about their story, about the special gift they are. So let's welcome, I think, Kathy first. Kathy, come on up. Let's give Kathy some.
Good, good.
All right, like Doug said, I'm going to share my experience with Valley Community Church and what it's done for me, but I'm going to have to back up 60 years before that so that I can kind of explain what a positive influence this church has been for me. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. I was born up in Washington, D.C. During the late 50s, when it was a very tumultuous time. My father had been in the military and had left the military by the time I came along. My parents were in their 40s when they had me. So he had left the military and gone to work for the Defense Department. And he was a scientist, an electrical engineer. And his job was designing missile heads to hit their targets. And our house was very concerned with war, war and politics. My mother was a political science major. She was a first-generation American. She was a German immigrant. And with all this talk of immigration, I think it's really brought to light for me a lot of what she struggled with and has explained to me a lot of the way she was. I think when her mother came in this country, even though they were pretty well off, she was taken quite soon after that to an internment camp. And she carried, this would be my grandmother, she carried that shame with her around her whole life. And so when I think about my mother being that first-generation American, but with that German background, it explains to me a lot about her. She was very mentally ill, and she carried with her kind of a belief that Germany had been saved by Hitler. And so her personality, her whole energy was a lot like the Nazi Party. And so I grew up every day of my childhood very scared and very uncomfortable with, my settings and all. I don't think my father was home a lot. I think he was involved, he was still involved with the military and traveling a lot. So I was with my mother pretty much all the time, and that had a huge impact on me. Also, my father died when I was young, so that left me pretty much without any protection. And we didn't go to church or have any spirituality or religion. So the only way I knew to cope with that, and this is all in retrospect, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I could not deal with what was going on in my life. It was very traumatic. So I divided myself into a lot of separate people. And I didn't think at the time that this would have such an effect on me, but all those separate people lived separate lives throughout my life, and it caused a great deal of confusion for me. I came out of my childhood with love defined as power, control, and sex. I did not want to pursue love. I didn't want anything to do with it, and I didn't want anything to do with family either. And I need to go back, because there was one thing that my mother did that really saved me spiritually, and that was, for some reason and somehow, I learned the Christmas story. And every Christmas she would put up a mural in our picture window of the Mother Mary and the baby Jesus. And this was a stained glass. It was translucent, so it was probably made out of some kind of tissue paper, but it was stained glass, and the light would shine through it. And I had that image, and I knew from somebody had to tell me the Christmas story. But the look on that Mother Mary's face and the piece on the baby's face was something that was very foreign to me, and that stuck with me. And I said, I want to know more about a mother and a child that relates like that. And I would carry that image with me through my whole life, and it probably did a lot to save me. I did well in school because somehow there was the sense in me that the only way I was going to get out of the situation I was in was to be functional, be stable, and get out. So I went through college. I went to Old Dominion in Norfolk, thinking I was going to major in medical technology. I was very interested in science and biology. And I found very quickly that I could not kill animals in the biology lab. So that didn't work out for me. And I left Norfolk, came back to Roanoke, decided that was a nice place to live, and started at Virginia Western. And while I was at Virginia Western taking classes, I took classes in secretarial science. I got a job, of course, in the Veterans Office, because even though I wanted to get as far away from the military, war, ballistics, all that stuff I was brought up with, I kept gradually moving towards it. And so I went to work at the Veterans Affairs Office, where I would meet my first husband, who was also a veteran. And life really started speeding up for me at that point. I got married and was very happy and all, but at the same time, these other parts of me that had come along in childhood were living kind of a completely different life. And their translation of love being power, control, and sex, and my background in guns and ballistics and all that, part of me kind of headed straight towards the pagans. So I had a life with an upcoming executive going on in a marriage, and then I had another life going on with these group of motorcycle people, and I had a tremendous amount of pain, emotional pain going on too. And in order to treat that, I got mixed up in drugs quite seriously. And I think by the time I was, in my early 20s, I had a very powerful narcotics addiction that would greatly influence my life. When I got pregnant with my first child, I realized that I was no longer just living for me. I could not keep on living the way I was because I was immediately in love with this baby, and I immediately associated it to that picture of the Mother Mary and the baby Jesus. I was going to finally be, this chance to be like the Mother Mary. And I was very sick at that time. And I had to run away from a lot of bad people, and I bought a house out in the country, and we didn't get television reception there. We'd get the sound, but not the picture. And there was an old TV evangelist preacher that used to say, reach out and touch the screen if you're addicted to drugs and need to be saved and all that. And I had no idea, who Jesus was, who God was, or anything. And I had no picture on that TV screen. But I knew I needed help. And so I reached out and I touched the screen. And I think it was that moment that I accepted Jesus. And I had no idea what that meant at that time. But from that moment on, my life started to just disintegrate and fall apart. And now I understand that as when something is very mixed up and bad, it has to be broken to put it back together again. But at the time, I ended up pretty much being homeless. My marriage fell apart. I was living out of a truck and at friends' houses with a 2-year-old, and life was very tumultuous. About this time, I met my second husband, and he was, gradually moving away from all of my childhood. I just keep running and running to try to make up for it. And this man had been a Southern Baptist his whole life. He had, very active in the church. And so, and he was also the love of my life. And when I met him, very good things happened. He didn't tolerate my drug addiction. The problem was that he drank. And I hadn't ever done much with alcohol. But I immediately switched addictions onto that. Again, I found myself pregnant, which is something I wanted so bad. I mean, there was a drive in me to be a mother because I was going to undo everything that had been done. And so I found the 12-step programs. And again, got sober and clean for that pregnancy. And I tell you, I have to stop and give the 12-step programs a real thing here, because I have never been anywhere. At the same time as I was doing this, I was pretty active in the Southern Baptist Church. I had studied, well, I'll go into that, but let me tell you about what the 12-step programs were for me. Nowhere had I ever been in my life, and you have to remember my background where I came from anybody who is not white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, anybody who's not upper class, So when I went into the 12-step programs, it was the only place I had ever been where it didn't matter who you were. Addiction is not picky, does not select. It doesn't matter what your skin color is, how much money you have, or anything. It doesn't spare people on social class. And there is no other disease that you can have where you can walk into a group of people from all different backgrounds and places and be right at home and talk about your affliction and have from 10 to 100 people respond back to you with their experience, strength, and hope, and tools, spiritual tools for getting through your disease. If you have COPD or cancer, you don't have that available to you. So I feel very fortunate that I was given this particular illness to deal with, because there's a lot of hope in it. So back to, at the same time as I was doing all this, I was teaching adult Sunday school in the Baptist church. And in order to do that, because I didn't have any background, I had to do a lot of in-depth Bible study and a lot of praying and a lot of getting to know Jesus, this person that I had reached out and touched the TV, years before. And so I learned a whole lot more about spirituality with that. About that time, I had my third child. And anybody who knows me really well will tell you that my children have saved my life. And I think you probably can tell that from my talk. Had I not gotten pregnant, if I had not had that desire to be a mother, I wouldn't have made it. And with the birth of that third child, I was starting to get to a place where I was somewhat spiritually comfortable. The problem is, when you're when you have some of the background I have and all, and having a child, I fell into a pretty deep postpartum depression, and my memories from childhood, now that I wasn't using any drugs or alcohol, they were starting to come back, and they didn't come back like normal. They came back in flashbacks, and I was having a tremendous amount of problem functioning. I ended up getting TDO to a state hospital, which was really a good thing for me, because what happened is I got diagnosed with bipolar, which I also believe I am. I've tried really hard to stay away from labels with this, but I think that's an important one that I need to say. And I got on medicine for the first time, and this somewhat medical medicine. I've been on medicine my entire life, but this somewhat stabilized me, and I started to understand what was wrong with me. I started to understand that I had post-traumatic stress since day one, and I reached out to Child Abuse Prevention Council for help and therapy and all, and I got involved in what's called the MILK program, which is Mothers Inside Loving Kids. And for me, I needed to give back for help I'd gotten from them, but I also needed to learn about childhood development and how to be a mom. So I went into the prisons and worked with women in there that had children, trying to help them learn parenting skills, and at the same time I was learning parenting skills too. But what was so significant for me was this was the place that I found women just like me. I had never before understood how damaging it is to have to be afraid of your mother. And most of these women were just like me. And they, usually the father was absent and there was a scary mother. And the only difference between me and them is I hadn't gotten caught. And I really learned with these women and healed with these women. And it was a very powerful thing for me. During this time, though, my marriage split. And I thought that I would die of a broken heart. I really thought I would. I had 3 girls, and I was on my own, and I knew, I had the awareness of what had happened to me and what I was struggling with, and it was just a very difficult and yet wonderful, magical time. I got a chance to not be partnered So I didn't have to put energy into that. It was just me and the girls. And I did a whole lot of healing during this time. I wasn't related in a church at this time at all. I was just stabilizing from the bipolar thing, and I was doing the 12-step programs, and I was praying intensely. And during this time, I think it was so painful for me to not have a husband, to have that broken heart, that I took Jesus as my husband. And that way of thinking helped me heal a whole lot. It helped me parent my kids. When I got healthier and ready, I learned techniques in the programs about how to bring into your life what you wanted. And so I made a list to God. AA had taught me about a God box too, and so I said, God, I'm ready to partner again. And I made a list of requirements, things that I wanted in a partner, things I had to have, things I wanted, and then things that I couldn't tolerate. And I put that list in a God box and let it go. And within several months after that, Pam Cobbett walked into my life. She was, I kid her, I say that she was my mail order to God bride. And with the entrance of Pam came Tammy and Velvet, since the band would come to practice. And they were tremendously positive. I never had to hide who I was to them. They just accepted me. And Tammy and Velvet kept saying, yeah, you need to come to this church. You need to, experience it. And I was kind of burned out on churches and all, but the band started playing here, and so I started coming. And of course, by this time, my kids, I think my youngest one was a teenager, so I didn't need to be in a church that had children's program anymore. And so I started coming here, and I just have to, this church was exactly what I needed for the time. I don't know that 5 years ago it would have worked, but this church has taught me how to think. It has also remothered me. And I've kind of fallen apart from the medical community, the psychiatric community. I don't think they have a real, I think we expect too much out of them, but I don't think they have a very good hold on, the problems all associated with the labels that I have. So this church stepped in the place of psychiatry, medicine, and has helped build my mind and undo those negative thoughts so that I know how to think right. And it has made all the difference in the world for me. I don't know how much time I have. I don't know how long. I was going to look at my clock when I got up here so I know how long, but I'm going to tell something real quick that some of you know. But I've been taking Wednesday night class with Marita on spiritual healing. And an incident happened to me the other month where I was stung by 2 hornets. I'd never had an allergy to hornets before, but they put too much toxin in my body, and within 7 to 10 minutes after they stung me, my organs started shutting down, and by the time the rescue squad got there, I wasn't breathing. And during that time, I had the experience of meeting that part, and I'm not sure I would have recognized her had I not had the training here, but that part of me that is eternal, the part of me that is the Christ within me, my soul, whatever you want to call it, but she was amazingly calm, untouched by this world, and she told me everything was going to be all right. Whether I lived or died, whether I came back or I went, didn't matter. And that concept is what everybody's been telling me here, and I got to experience it. And the amount of depression that has lifted off of me because of this teachings in this church is, I'm not sure I really believe in miracles. I believe in healing. But it's been extremely healing. So I will turn everything over to Pam and let her.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Oh, man. I grew up in Northern Virginia, too, and my dad was a scientist. She was never home. My mom was angry. I'll sit down now. It's so weird how that works out in this church. It's just so weird. So all that's true. My dad really was a scientist in Washington. And I think the beauty of the story I want to tell you, it has some dark sides to it, but I have to tell you right up front that as dark and horrifying as things have been for me at times, mostly find it hilarious. Before I was really inculcated into the spiritual growth that is here at this church, I think that my ability to laugh at myself has been a salvation. And it's also been a downfall as I learned how our language and the words we use to describe ourselves and our lives can be so, I'll use the word powerful, so that you understand that I have learned something. I sort of see my timeline, my personal timeline, in kind of like 6 stages. And the 5th one was horrific, so I'm not even going to go there. But what I want you all to hear is that my youth and my development and my breeding years were quite a struggle, but I've come to know them as a joyous struggle. And if I hadn't been through that mess, I wouldn't have been able to survive level 5 and be here with you all. So I need to start off right away before I tell you the most terrible thing. I need to tell you that I understand that I have a very busy mind, and I have a very large, expansive personality, and I'm very spontaneous. I've never been a very good planner, and I'm kind of naturally cheerful, and that's all kind of ironic because, like my friend Kathy, I have suffered horribly from depression. And I do remember once seeing, when my doctor stepped out of the room, my doctor, and I was flipping through my notes, because I'm a very curious person. When I saw that he had written chronic depression on my medical chart, I was like, when he came back in there, I was like, what the hell? If you're going to call it chronic depression, what the hell am I ever going to do? And so he felt that was ironic. I feel now like I had in me what I needed to know to get rid of the problems that I make for myself. So, it's true that I really came up in a pretty suburban, upwardly mobile Northern Virginia household. I had 2 amazing identical twin brothers, which for a person with a large, expansive personality, they were like these great pets. And I'm a big sister, and I was gonna like lead them around and be a good example. And those two things were just like really at odds. And I was always having to be reined in. And my mom, who was very present, was, I see her now as an unhappy person and probably a product of her time, kind of like your mom was, Kathy. She was pretty, our house was clean, and there was a lot of mood music on the hi-fi and lots of discourse in our families. My father, in the early years, taught at UNC, and there were lots of interesting people around. And consequently, I thought I was interesting too. But I was always just being squashed down, just because that's just kind of the way it was. And I can't really say that the person I kind of felt like I needed to be was really nurtured in that family. It wasn't really their fault. And I did have a spiritual development. I had a Baptist grandmother who hated my Presbyterian mother. And so I went to these different churches. I learned Bible stories, and I believed them a lot. I believed in them a lot. And I believed in them so much that the disappointment when things turned out not to be true was just really, I ate it up, and it became kind of who I am. And kind of what I mean by that, I have a few anecdotes, and I'm sorry some of you people may have heard this before, but I went to a Baptist kindergarten because back then that was preschool. My parents were educated, and they wanted me to be educated. In Baptist kindergarten, if you ask awkward questions, they're not answered. So you have to have some empirical proof. So I was often in trouble. And my parents were once called on the carpet in my elementary school because I was wandering about in the class and interrupting the teaching, and the teacher called me on it. And I said to her, in front of everyone, I said, "You can't talk to me like that." And she said, "And why not?" And I said, "Because I'm retarded." And she said, "Who told you that?" And I said, "My parents." And it's funny, but it's hilarious. But, because I remember sitting in the hallway with my feet, just kicking on the bench, waiting for my parents to get out of the principal's office. And I had a way of reading between the lines and figuring out who I was. And although retardation could be cured with eyeglasses, I still felt like I was retarded. And that's a true thing. And so these Bible stories that I would read that had these lovely Victorian etchings of angels coming out of the clouds, and it was so elegant. I would go out in the yard with my friends, and we would comb the skies on a cloudy day looking for God, because I really felt like that would happen. It was equally possible that I could spot enemy planes or Godzilla on the horizon. Both of those things were like the same, and both of them were just like faults. But I loved that little person that I was that really thought I could find those things. And I think that it was the Baptists in my young life that were the most peculiar. One time in Baptist Vacation Bible School, I was invited to use this homemade clay and make something based on a resonant Bible story. I was 7. So I dyed my clay a pale orange. It's like the same color as the biblical landscape in my little Sunday school books. And I made the cave with the stone rolled away, the tomb that Jesus rose from. And my grandmother tried to serve it to me for dinner as a sweet potato. So it was very crushing. And it was the same church that, it was a very large church, and I came out of it one Sunday, and I noticed there was a small church right across the street called First Baptist Church. I asked my grandmother, which is first, our First Baptist Church or that First Baptist Church? And she said, well, they're both the same, but that First Baptist Church is where the black people go. And so I kind of mulled this over, and I thought, well, the black people don't have a big white steeple that you can see in the next county with carillon music that plays twice a week. And they don't have TV on Sunday. So the black people don't get to see their neighbors being especially cute and holy on TV if they didn't go to church. And I thought this was wrong. So I stopped the line exiting the church, and I interviewed the preacher. And I said, I have an idea. I said, I think we should invite the black people to our big church, and then the little church could be for us little kids. And we wouldn't be relegated to the windowless basement. We'd have a little church for little people, and the black people could have the holy music and be on TV. It made perfect sense. It was never really explained to me why this was ridiculous or funny. It was just sad. And when I was 5 years old in Presbyterian Sunday school, and we learned about the Last Supper, and this was like a prelude to learning about communion, which is something I very much enjoy today, I actually understood the story of the bread and the wine and Christ's last meal with his friends to be a metaphor. I was 5, and I took it home, and I was like, here's the thing, guys, my little brothers, which I like to dress up like nuns. Here's the thing. Every time you eat, every time you gather for a meal, you think of God. You think of Christ. This is important. This is what I learned in Sunday school today. And it was like years and years and years of, oh, no. We're talking the body and the blood, and there's this indigestible wafer for you to eat. And plus there's a lot of rules, whether or not you can have it, depending on which church you go to. It was just indigestible. It was just indigestible. So it's not, it just wasn't valuable to me when I grew up. And I came up in my wonder years in the 70s when Jesus was all the rage. I don't know if you remember One Way to Heaven Through the Power of the Cross. I mean, Jesus was everywhere. There were rock operas and musicals, and there was a Bible study at lunchtime in my high school taught by my physiology teacher. There was a storefront downtown where young people could go and light candles and pray and practice their breathing strategies. And it was just like so much stuff out there. And I started going to different churches, and they were just weird to me. Pentecostal churches, Catholic churches. I've always wanted to be Catholic. But it's just too hard. But I really tried, and actually, I got bored. I was never bored with myself, but I got bored with my family, and I got bored with church. And this upset my family a lot. They were, I wasn't blooming where I was planted, and I just didn't understand. And being a spontaneous person, and being somewhat, it was when I left home that I truly started a terrible battle with depression. And I learned from therapists that the way I felt about myself might have been a misunderstanding about the way I was raised, but I didn't have to live my life like that. I didn't have to believe that was the way my life was. And that was enlightening, but I wasted so much time being a victim. You know, when you're young and you're in those prodigal years, I just wasted so much time being like, oh, my mom is... And that was just a mess. it didn't serve me well, but, you know, I lived through it. I'm very spontaneous, not a good planner. I went to an ill-fitting college where I mostly forgot to go to class, and then ran off with my English professor. And then I couldn't stay out of class. I was in every class all day long. And I traveled a lot. I met lots of interesting writers and artists. I had a really exciting life. But that man who turned out to be my husband was is an alcoholic, and 20 years of that was really hard on me. And it was really hard on me. And I used a man who loved me as my everything. Some of us kind of do that. And when I lost my first child, I felt so depressed when he felt relieved. That was hard. And while I didn't get addicted to drugs, this I think is hilarious too, I got addicted to exercise. I felt so lost when I lost that child, and there was like not room for that possibility in my marriage. And I remember like kind of wandering through the house one day, and I was like, am I getting fat? And my husband said, you could use a little toning. And I responded like, and I embarked on a life through my 30s where I taught aerobics, I taught core strength and endurance to the Hampton-Sydney football team. I rode my bike 30 miles a day before work. I rode my bike using those big atlases you buy at the 7-Eleven to Appomattox and to Richmond. I rode my bike to North Carolina. One time I rode my bike from Maine to Florida, after which, probably because I was lean and gorgeous, I accidentally got pregnant doing another kind of exercise with a stranger. And I have to tell you, it does sound funny when, sorry Maria, I have to tell you, at the time, this was heartbreaking. This was biblical. This was just the most awful thing. The dichotomy was so overwhelmingly confusing. It was just, I actually found myself being a person that I did not recognize or know how to cope with. And I devised a plan to relieve myself of life with a loaded 45. And it was a powerful experience, both for me and everyone who loved me, because it was the beginning of several years of thinking that when things got really bad, it was all my fault, because I'm the center of the universe. And the best thing to do was to die. And I have on several occasions contrived very artful plans to rid my loved ones of this terrible mess. And it was, when I look back on it, it was just heartbreaking, which is why I did not want anybody hearing this to think that I am anything other than robust and cheerful, because I think I would be a very mundane person if I had not had this experience. And so, obviously, things worked out for the better. And some of you have met my children, my adult children. And I live quite happily by myself. I'm often overwhelmed, as I think we all are, by these times and the struggles that we go through. And so my blessing today for you is this. what a great intercession we have when we live long enough to reconcile with ourselves and with our loved ones, and can present ourselves as the person that we are, and get the love that all of us deserve. And all of us are willing to give, and all of us are willing to get. And so, when we have the time and the faculties to find these people that can help us, and they're the same, the people who harm us and the people that help us. When we live and learn past those who have influenced us for good or evil, we are able to lead each other into a destiny of light, which is what I found when I came to this church, took classes, socialized and conversed with new friends, and understand that I don't have to rely on the Bible stories, that Jesus was a man with the Christ in him, and it's the Christ that we all have in us, and that is our personal relationship with Christ. And I just want to finish by saying, I had dinner last week with friends, and some of you were there, and it was joyous, and there was a lot of laughter and conversation, in the midst of which someone asked me, because I guess I had said something, I don't remember what. Somebody said, "Where do you work?" And I answered like that, "In hell." I mean, it just popped out of my mouth. And everyone was laughing, but what I want to tell you is, I heard myself say about myself, about what I choose to do every day when I get up. I heard myself say that I work in hell. And so none of us are perfect yet. And for those of you who heard me say that, I just want you to know I heard myself. And as hilarious as some of our life choices can be, we all have a chance at love. And I'm just so happy to be a part of this church, and I'm happy to share with you all that it's done for me.
I don't know if I can follow all that or not. I might have to change my song. Let's see here. As always, I had a couple of songs picked out, and this morning when I woke up, something else came into my mind, and it was a song that I had written. And I never really thought of singing this song in church. You know, with all the things going on in the world, you know, the stress, work with family, you know, just there's so many things that people go through, and how you deal with it is, you know, it's different for everybody. For me, I wrote this song mostly because I wanted to just write a country song. I thought, I'm gonna write a country song. Never been a country artist, but I wanted to write a country song, and this is what I came up with. Now, it really doesn't make sense until we get into the bridge of the song, but I changed the words this morning so that I could sing it in church. So, all right, hold just a second. Let me get this cabbage patch out of my throat. I've been raking leaves and all that stuff, which does nice help. So, this is called I Drive. Sometimes things don't go just right. That's just the way it is. You think you've got it figured out, but it's just hit or miss. One foot on the platform, the other in a grave. Wish I could leave it all behind. I need to get away.
So I drive, yes I drive. I get in my car and I drive. Oh, I drive. When the days all run together and the nights end too soon, you just picking up where you left off, singing the same old tune. Tired of getting to run around and asking yourself why. Sometimes I just want to lay it all down and find somewhere to hide. So I drive, yes I drive. I get in my car and I drive. Oh, I drive. And then I see the perfect sunset and I pull off of the road. And I thank the Lord for all I have and for leading me back home. And I drive, yes I drive. I get in my car and I drive. Oh, I drive.
Gary. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Pam, for being so brave to share with us and to show us that divine science does work in our lives. Thank you for showing us the way. Now we celebrate our blessings of the gifts. And if you look in your service, if you look in your pamphlets, you can see the orders of service. You'll see the blessings of the gifts if you repeat after me. Today, I acknowledge God, omnipresent, as the source of all good, as the source of my good. With this acknowledgement, I accept His will, which is abundance in every aspect of my life. I release all thoughts of lack and limitation, and I am open and receptive to the increased flow of abundance to me right now. I joyfully accept the gifts of life and give freely of the special gift that I am. Through me, God omnipresent blesses and multiplies this gift for all. Thank you, dear God.
All right, during this time, take a moment to turn to somebody beside you and tell them thank you for the special gift that they are.
Thank you for the special gift.
Thank you.
All right, coming around is a basket with the initials or the name of a person to pray for. And we know that when we pray for others, we're also blessed. So take a name or two and pray this week.
Okay, thank you, Kathy and Pam. That was great. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to talk about your life. And I just want both of you to know that the time that I've known both of you, and I've known Kathy a little bit longer than Pam, but I have seen a difference in both of you. And I really enjoy being around you when we get a chance to do our social, because we don't get much time at church to visit, but when we go to our coffee and so forth, we do have a chance to get to know each other better. And so it's always just great to be around both of you, and I really appreciate you sharing your stories. Some of it I already knew from some of you, and some of it I didn't, but it was great. And so I do want you to know that I have seen a change in both of you, so I just wanted you to know that. It's working, yes, it's working. I can assure you that it works. So just wanted to try to make these short, but I don't know that I can. There's always things going on at the church people don't know about. Yesterday, we had a rescue of a crow, and our injured crow, we had, somebody called me Friday night late and told me that there was a crow out here injured, and they had gave it some food and some water, but they were going out of town, so they couldn't rescue it. So I'm here yesterday, and I don't know what to do about the bird, because I don't know much about birds. So, I'm on the way home, so I'm calling. So, of course, Martha and Pam Woods rescued this crow, took it to the Southwest Wildlife place, and they had a broken wing and a broken leg. I understand, is that correct what they said?
Yeah, we have a case number.
We're going to call and check on it today. So anyhow, when I called that place, but then I also called the animal control, and animal control said when they came out, they were going to put it down, and I said, no, we're not going to do that. So anyhow, Pam and Martha got it in the computer box and rescued it. So anyhow, they asked for a donation, and I'm going to, the next couple of weeks, I'm going to put a basket out, and people would like to make a donation to the Southwest Virginia Wildlife Center. It's here right off of Bramilton, is that correct? It's somewhere off of Bramilton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, we'll make a donation to them, and so if you want to give to that, I'll put out a basket this Sunday and probably next Sunday, so we can send them a donation. Also, next Saturday we were going to go kayaking, and so as we know, all of our events are never written in stone, so something else came up. There's a jazz festival going on at Salem at the Longwood Park, and it goes on from 4 to 9 next Saturday evening, so we have decided to change from kayaking to go to the jazz festival, and I'll be making a one call about that later in the week. We'll change the kayak date to another Saturday. I'll let you know what that's going to be as the events people get their notes to me. This week's flowers are for Wendy. Happy birthday. And let's see, we went to a movie Thursday night. Some of us from the church went to the South County Library, The Power of Forgiveness. It was a wonderful movie. It was very powerful, I thought. So I think that a lot of people would like to see that. So if you all would like to see it, I'm willing to purchase it for the church, and maybe we can watch it sometime. So I will do that and let you know when we'll have it. But it was very, very powerful, and we had a guy there from that had survived the Virginia Tech shooting that talked a little bit. So anyhow, I thought we would maybe get that movie and see it here at the church. So I will do that and let you know when we have it. One other thing is, most of you all know Kamara and James Fagans. They are moving from Ferrum to Colorado, and they're moving in August. Kamara has asked me if I could get some volunteers or anybody that doesn't want to volunteer. If you want to get paid, they'll pay you to come on the Sunday, August the 5th after church and help load their truck, because I think they're leaving that next day. They're leaving on that Monday. So if anybody's willing to do that, let me know so I can get back with her. And Kamara does our website for us, and James used to sing at the church for on many different occasions. So anyhow, they asked for some help, and if we can do that, I'd be glad to do it. And she said they would pay people if you wanted to be paid for it too. So anyhow, just let me know if anybody can help do that. I know it's a drive to Ferrum, but anyhow, it's worth. I told her I would ask. Okay. And you have something, Marita?
Yeah, just one thing. In the early days of the church, there was a man and his wife who were very much a part of the church, and his name was Leroy Moran. He's a local lawyer, and he was our lawyer, and he was a member of the church, and they were very, very...
They donated the steeple, matter of fact.
Yeah, exactly right. They donated the steeple. Well, Leroy passed away, and there's going to be just a visitation with the family tonight from 6 to 8, I think, and a funeral tomorrow. And for those of you who might have remembered him, a very tall guy and just a sweet, sweet guy, you might want to attend, either visit or go to the funeral, which will be tomorrow, I believe at 10 o'clock. That was all.
Where's the funeral?
It's going to be at the Okies South Chapel, which is just
Visitation as well.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Our closing hymn number 40. It's in every one of us. We're going to sing both verses. Hymn number 40.
Join hands, a circle of family love. Hey, love. Oh, no, Now, before you close your eyes, because I know we immediately bow our heads and close our eyes, take a look in the face, the full face of family, right here, right now. While we're not a large group, we are a special group, a unique, loving, kind family. I have friends who say you spend a lot of time with those church people. I say, yes, I do. They're my family here in Virginia.
Them's our church people.
I love you all, and I, with deepest gratitude, thank Pam and Kathy for sharing their very delicate experiences and their growth. And let's look in for just a moment. Most gracious, loving God, we thank you for the peace that truly passes our own understanding. My prayer is that the Christ consciousness rise up in all of us, that we be the peace that others are looking for. And as we share the peace, we share the knowledge that God is everywhere, and that where we are, God is, and all is well. In peace and love, let's go share this with our circle of influence. Amen.
Amen.